Hey, hope you've turned to Hebrews chapter 12. We're going to talk about that. I've entitled this message this morning, It Ain't Over Till It's Over. Now, legendary Yogi Berra, I love college football and I love baseball. I just kind of like sports in general, golf. But legend of Yogi Berra was famous, and he was always famous for saying, and that was one of his quotes. He has a lot of different sayings that were attributed to him, and maybe all of them are not true, but they're close. And perhaps the most famous one is this: it ain't over till it's over. I love this one. He said, baseball is 90% mental and 50% is physical. I don't know how you get that many percent, but anyway, that's the way he did. This is my best one. You should always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't come to yours. Now, I got to tell you, that's funny right there. I don't care who you are, that's funny. The writer of our text didn't say it ain't over till it's over, but he could have, because that's what his gist of his writings were all about. The author is writing, you need to know a little bit about it. The author is writing to a group of Jewish Christians, and they're not finding this new life upon which they've embarked easy. They instead find it distressingly full of all kinds of difficulties. How many of you know that's true, the Christian walk? Yeah. They're being persecuted. They're being robbed of their goods. They have enemies both within and without. They are becoming discouraged by the moment. More and more of them are becoming persuaded that maybe this conversion was a mistake. Some look back at their old life wondering if it wouldn't be better to probably renounce Christianity as just some sheer madness. Sounds a lot like the Israelites when they left Egypt. They got out in the desert and they had a few little troubles, and they went to saying, boy, we had it good back in Egypt. You know, you tend to forget all the bad stuff when you're like that. But no, they wouldn't have. It is to the respect that this author writes this letter. It is to that. He reminds them that their crucified master is God's very supreme revelation to mankind, that he's prepared a way for us. And he urges them to hold to that profession. This thing has really resonated in me in the last week, that we need to hold fast to our profession of faith. He warns them against falling short of the grace of God. In fact, he calls to the witness stand. If you look at Hebrews 11, he calls to the witness stand, witness after witness, who reminds them, yeah, it was tough, but we held on to the end. We made a good fight out of it. We took it all the way. And they're like in the grandstands hollering down and making us aware, we're with you. We know what you're going through. He warns them against falling short of the grace of God. Calls to the witness stand, as it were, saint after saint, to give their testimony of the value of faith. He talks about the reality of things not seen. He reminds them, don't lose courage. Paul urges us, let us throw off everything that hinders and every sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out for us. Not only does he urge the importance and even the necessity of being loyal to their faith, but he also gives them some very definite and helpful directions for living the Christian life. God just didn't stick us here and say, okay, you have a free-for-all, but he's laid out a path for us to travel. It's good to travel that way, otherwise we'd be everywhere. Could you imagine having the Boston Marathon or the New York race and and having no road map mapped out, no pathway, and just say, well, just run everywhere you want to. Are you kidding me? People would be killed. They'd lose their way. All kinds of things would happen. So he gives us directions for finishing the race. Now, I want you to keep that in mind because this is imperative. It's what this sermon is all about. It is us getting to the end, crossing the finish line. So he said, let us run. Now, being a Christian is a strenuous matter. Sissies, babies, they don't make it. You got to be strong. You got to be able to do what needs to be done. Notice that he doesn't tell them that to be a Christian is the easiest way of getting through life. God never misdirected us. He never said, now, come on, it's an easy road. You just have at it. No, he tells us that it's hard. I mean, the very fact that he said, let us run. The Greek word for that sentence is the word agon, A-G-O-N, and it means to fight or to have conflict. It's no wonder that Paul tells us, put on the whole armor of God that you might be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. What do you mean? People are like, Paul said, put on the whole armor of God so we can stand here and do nothing. Are you kidding? You put on armor, you got to be ready to fight. That's usually a sign that person's going to get it on here. There are outward and visible foes. We face those all the time. I've faced some. I had a lady tell me one day, if she saw me on the street, she'd run over me with her car. She meant it. Y'all know me. I'm an easygoing guy. Can't imagine. But these are nothing compared to the enemies that are spiritual and unseen. There are devils out there. There are wickedness out there that just wants to see you fail. They want to see you give in, give up, give out. They don't want you to make it to the end. Our wrestling, Paul reminds us, is not against flesh and blood. I'm usually not out here having to battle somebody physically for my Christianity. But every day, in almost every way, the devil is trying to get you, trying to make you run, trying to make you quit. Paul said, let us run. It kind of speaks of a white heat earnestness. You holding on. You're ready to go. You're not giving up. To make life count, anywhere, anytime, we have to give our best. That's what he's calling us to do. I am sorrowfully aware that if Jesus were here in a bodily form today, he might greatly be disturbed by our lack of commitment. We started the race well, but we haven't yet finished the race well. He might look at us and said, hey, you did a good job. You got off to a great start. But I noticed you've been lagging behind. I noticed you haven't been giving it your all. That's what he's saying. It's worthy to notice that this race is marked out for us. It's not a race of going ahead. It's not a race of lagging behind. We are now, today, this moment, in this race. It seems that there are a lot of people spending a lot of energy, but they're running backwards. I love college football better than the NFL. I love baseball and the other games. And there was a story told. I wasn't back there, but in 1929, the Golden State Bears faced the Georgia Tech, thank you, in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena for the national championship. It was during that time they were playing that a man named Roy Riegels was a center. And there was a fumble by the Yellow Jackets, and Roy reached down and scooped it up. And for the longest time, you may have heard the story of Wrong Way Roy. Have you ever heard that? I didn't know why he ran the wrong way. 60 yards the wrong way. And so I got interested in it. I studied, went back and read all the articles about it. And Roy admitted, he said, when I scooped up that fumble, I was hit. Pow. And when he did, he said, I turned and I got confused. I lost my bearings. And he took off running. And his teammates are running after him and they're screaming, stop, stop, stop. And he's running the wrong way. And they finally overtake him down around the 3-yard line. But all of a sudden he's hit by a swarm, no pun intended, of Yellow Jackets. And down he goes at the 1-yard line. So rather than take the chance of being fumbling or losing yardage and being in the end zone, they decide to punt. So the Golden State Bears punt, but alas, it's blocked by Georgia Tech, which in turn then got him in a safety, scored 2 points. Man, Roy Riggles was devastated. So they went in the locker room and he walked all the way with his head down, just ashamed of what had happened, couldn't believe it. Got in the locker room, no matter what was said, he couldn't get over it. He had nearly lost the game for him. He was sitting there with his head in his hands, and his coach said, all right, let's get back on the field. Roy said, I don't think I can do it. He said, you can do it. You don't have to quit. You don't have to give up. You can do it. And finally, with all of his coaching efforts, got Roy back out on the field. He in turn caused some fumbles, made some plays. Georgia Tech still won, but the score was 8-7. They only lost by 1 point. Roy never did get over that game. For his lifetime, he is known as Wrong Way Roy. Boy, that's a name to be attached to, isn't it? But he realized something, that no matter how hard you're hit, no matter what goes on, you don't give up. You keep going. He was so distraught in the locker room that he had to be talked into returning to the game. How about that? That's what Paul's doing here today. He's giving us a pep talk. He's coaxing us. Get back in the game. Don't give up. Don't quit. You made some mistakes, but you can make it. He talks about, first of all, let us run stripped of every handicap. What does that mean? It should be our first and supreme purpose to win this race. Some have figured I can't win, I'll just quit. Others have decided it's not important, I'll lag around. You don't see them at the Boston Marathon kind of going. If you're in that race, you're running. If you're in that race, you have stripped down of everything that would hold you down. That's why they wear such flimsy clothes. They don't want to be weighted down. Whatever will hinder us, we must put aside. Over and over again, this is what an athlete does to win a race. Somehow or another in the church, we got to get that in our minds. We've sort of just took the nonchalant attitude, oh, well. But it's not that, church. This week, God has impressed upon me, preach this thing. It's not over. We haven't come to a conclusion. It's not the end yet, but it's getting close. So we have to put aside. I love the old Rocky movies. Don't judge me. I always like this underdog come from behind win. I always root for the guy who seems to be the one that go, oh, he won't do anything. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. He'll do it. And every time Rocky comes from the bottom with tenacity of a bulldog. He comes to work. He works out. He does whatever it takes. And in that end, we see him throw the last punch, withstand the last hit to make a champion. That's what God's talking about. He's saying we have to have within us a desire to win. Church, that's what the devil wants to do this morning. Strip you of your desire to win. He wants you to become nonchalant. He wants you to go, it's no big deal. Because he knows if he can get you to stop, he can win. He knows that people start off as a young Christian, bam, 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 they're on the road, bam, 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 but they get hit, bam, and they get up and they get hit and they go a little further. But a lot of times on the race, they go, oh man, I'm tired. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. That's what these Jews were thinking. Is it worth the battle? Is it worth the fight? Sure it is. The win is worth it. And so, if we expect this race, if we expect to run it successfully, Bob, get to the end, Susan just made it. We put aside, he said, sin. And it doesn't just mean the glaring, obvious sins, but sin. Anything that weights us down. Not only are we to put aside every sin, he says, but also every weight. Now, a weight is something that is not necessarily sinful in itself, but if we often allow it to become sinful for us because of our wrong use of it, there are many good things. I knew a preacher that was on radio. He's a great preacher. He said, I don't have to worry about the bad things. It's not the bad things that keep me down. It's the good things that weigh me down, that keep me running this race, dragging. And I think that's true of all of us. We have a lot of good things in our life, a lot of good things. But sometimes they keep us from running successfully this race that God's laid out for us. But they still become weights. Weights that weigh us down, hold us back from doing the things that, well, God wants us to do. And that's what he's talking about here. Let us run, stripped of every weight. He said, lay aside every weight. Now, surely this has become the acid test for anything that we do in life. I have over the years had people, I don't have them so much anymore, but they would constantly be saying, now, is this right or is this wrong? And they would, can I do this? Can I do that? And what I realized was they weren't looking to finish this race as much as they were just get by the day-to-day kind of thing. The answer lies in the question we really should ask ourselves. Does this, whatever it is, help or does it hinder me and my finishing this Christian race? So regardless of what it is, you have to look at it and go, is this going to hold me back? Is this going to weigh me down? Is this going to cause me not to be able to do my best for Christ? Finish the race. It ain't over till it's over. When I was a little boy, we moved up to Rincon. We were, in fact, the very first people to live in Westwood Heights. Our house was there. We were in it. One house was being built, and one was a show house out on 21 when it was a 2-lane road. And yes, I am that old. There weren't many people. Finally, a few houses were built and some kids moved in. And, you know, nine-year-old boys are kind of weird. So I went out one night, actually, out under the street light. And I found this big old frog, just a toad. But he was a pretty good sized boy. And you're going to see this picture in just a minute. I might as well spit it out. I had a pocket full of ball bearings. Now, little boys usually carried marbles or something. I had a steel, just a bulging pocket full of steel ball bearings. And I figured it'd be a good thing to roll these up there to that frog, see what he'd do. So I roll one up there, and that frog said, I said, look at him. That's pretty nifty right there. Roll another one. I mean, what is a 9-year-old boy going to do under a street light at 9 o'clock at night? I roll another one. I roll another one. Time after time after time, I'd roll that up there to him. He'd get it. I could see him getting fatter and fatter. I finally finished. I had a double handful of them, and I'd fed every one of them to that shot dodger. And then I went over there and I bumped him, and he tried to hop, and he went. Couldn't move. I bumped him again. That dude could not hop off. He couldn't go anywhere. He was loaded down with ball bearings. You could see him on his side and belly. He was just full. You could see them little ball bearings in there. I said, that's the neatest thing. Now, for all you animal lovers, Donnie asked me after the first service, he said, I got to ask you, is that really true? I said, yeah. I went over to the frog and I got him, poor thing couldn't hop away. And I grabbed him by his back legs and I shook him. And all those ball bearings came out. And then I laid him down and bumped him on the butt and he hopped off. That's a true story. That's true. That's a true story. And when I was writing this sermon, I thought about that. We're kind of like that frog. Man, things come running up to us, we lap it up. We don't think that's a little weight. And then something else comes and we lap it up. And we get a little heavier. I don't mean necessarily size-wise. It might be, but this engagement, that engagement, may be business, may be social. It may be something altogether harmless in itself, but it robs us of the possibilities and makes us fail in the race. And if it does, then it needs to be cast aside. Sometimes I wonder if God doesn't need to pick us up sometime and rid us of all this extra things that we've gathered. You know, they may not be harmful. I'm not trying to be funny, it didn't kill the little toad, but he couldn't move. Really, literally could not move. And I wonder sometimes if we don't do the same thing in this race that we're in, and never forget that this is a race, and that God intends on us to finish it and finish it strong. But the devil is going to feed us. The devil is going to put out there in front of us anything that he thinks will keep you from finishing the race. But I'm here to remind you this morning it's not over until it's over. If anything robs us of the possibilities of finishing this race, it's wrong. It needs to be laid aside. I've learned one thing in this life. It's not my job to do everything for everybody and everything for everything. It's my job to finish the race. So he says not only lay aside every weight, but then he gives us the next part of this. He says to us, let us run with patience. Now that's interesting to me because he's basically saying, let us persist. Not stop and start, not stop and quit, but go. Run with persistence. This race is not a 100-yard dash. It's not a 50-yard dash. It is a long-term race to the end, go till you can't, long cross-country stretch through this life, no matter how long it lasts. I said at Bob's wife's funeral this past week, God has a time clock. I know he does, because Ecclesiastes says there's a time to be born and there's a time to die. And I'm to run this race until I'm finished. I'm to run this race until it's time to quit. And I can't do it weighted down by every little thing. I've got to stop, look at this race and go, Lord, what is it that's holding me back? You say, you do you? Yeah, I pray that prayer almost every day. Lord, don't let anything hold me back. Because it's not this world that's important. It's about going the max. Some people are losing their patience because they're meeting with opposition. Somebody hurt my feelings. You baby, get over it. I'm not going back to that church. I don't like that preacher. But you ain't got to like me, but you got to love Jesus. And to love him, you got to at least love me. You know, I'd go to that church, but there's too many hypocrites. Well, you go to church with hypocrites or go to hell and be with them there too. That's right. I done got bold, hadn't I? That's what kind of near-death experiences will do for you. Some are losing their patience because they've lost sight of the goal. We've got so entangled. He uses that word entangle. We've become so entangled in this world that we forget what the other ultimate goal is out there. Church, I'm here to tell you today, I've heard it all my life, and I was born and a week later dedicated in church, and every time I went to church I heard the same thing. Jesus is coming. And you say, well, look at there. It's been 70 years and he still ain't came. That doesn't mean anything. He's still right around the corner. In fact, I see it more every day. I see glimpses of it more every day than ever before. We hear stuff about mark of the beast. We think, oh, that's out of sight. Somebody sent me a picture of somebody scanning the palm of their hand, paying for their food. The technology with AI is bringing all of that to pass. I'm not telling you when he's coming. I'm just telling you he's close to coming. We are close to the end of this race. We are close to the end of this race. And we better start acting like it. So in this final supposition that this author gives us, he tells us that we're to run with patience. We're to persevere. We're to keep on keeping on. Because it ain't over till it's over. He tells us, let us run looking unto Jesus. We're not to undertake this race looking at the hypocrites in the world. If you do, you'll be disillusioned. You can't follow preachers. We've already found that to be true. You can't follow ministries. You got to look unto Jesus. Because when all is said and done, and they may let you down, Jesus will never let you down. He'll never give up on you. He'll never quit. He'll always be there for you. Let us run this race with patience, liberated from anything that entangles us, and looking unto Jesus. I'm not going to church because, you know, I don't want to be ugly this morning, but your little whiny butt will go to hell. Because you let somebody get in the way of looking to Jesus. I am way too old and I came way too close to play around anymore. We ought to run this race. It ain't over till it's over. And we are to do it looking unto Jesus. You know, Peter would write and tell us to keep our eyes on Jesus. Paul would tell us, keep our eyes on Jesus. I wonder if Peter wasn't reminded constantly of his water walking experience, where he steps out of the boat and everything's great. He's walking on water. People say, oh, he had terrible faith. Hey, any of you walked on water lately? Just asking. And he said he was good till he looked down and saw the waves and he took his eyes off of Jesus. This way is hard. It's tough. Sometimes you feel like giving up. Sometimes you've been battered and beaten by the things around you. But keep looking unto Jesus. Don't get your eyes off of him. Don't get it on people. Don't get it on man. Don't get it on preachers. Don't get it on people doing well in sinful life. Keep on keeping on, looking unto Jesus. We've got to begin to make what we're doing count for Jesus. Man, if you're teaching a Sunday school class, be the best teacher you can be. If you're a care sitter for somebody, be the best you can be. I don't care what you're doing in life, be the best you can be, always lifting up Jesus. Do the best job you can do. If you're a youth dealer, if you're a music pastor, if you're a pastor, if you're an associate, be the best you can be. Strip yourself of everything that hinders you. All of our ministries need to be reevaluated to make sure they are for God's glory. We have people, wonderful people. I didn't mention the people who work in our coffee shop in the mornings and other things that go on all over this church that's done by great volunteers. Do it the best you can do it. We need to examine ourselves on a daily basis, and I do, to make sure we're still in the race and to make sure we're staying competitive in the race. All because it's a race to the end. Whatever end that might be, it is a race to the end. If I check out before he comes, that's when my race stops. If I hang on till he comes, that's when my race stops. But I don't quit. I don't give up. I'm not giving in. I have thought about it. I'll be 70 years old in the next month. And I've kind of looked around sometime and mealy-mouthed around to God. You know, these people get to be retired. 3 things keep me from retiring: food, clothing, and shelter. But God reminds me from time to time, I have a job to do. And it's not about me retiring. It's all about me finishing the race. Whatever I do, whatever little contribution I make to God, is because I need to finish the race. Some of you may have contemplated quitting. Well, I don't know about this church stuff. I see them start, and they start off well. Whoa, whoa, whoa. But then they start like they're going for God, Oop, they back up a little. Going for God, and oop, they back up a little bit. And sooner or later, you see them as they just kind of start stopping. And then you look around and say, I wonder where so-and-so is. I don't know. They just quit. I'd hate to get to the finishing line of this race and give up. Most of you know I had a kind of a difficult time a few weeks ago. My memories still, if I don't know your name, it's because I draw a blank sometime since that little episode. My wife said, you refuse to call it a seizure, don't you? I said, I do. Just an episode. I'm on the missions board for the state of Georgia, Assemblies of God. We meet with missionaries from time to time, and I love missionaries. We always support them. Our church, I believe, supports just about every single solitary missionary that comes from Georgia. That includes Chi Alpha, which is college missionaries, and most home missionaries. A few months ago now, several months ago, I interviewed a couple. The husband was a doctor. I think he was a pediatric doctor, but something like that. She had another career. And they both were giving up their careers to go back to Africa from where they were from to do ministry. You look at that and go, wow, he was a doctor. And they're giving it up. And they'll live on support. We support them. Right after this took place, whatever it was that I had, she wrote me a letter. Julianne, do we have that? She wrote me a letter. She said, part you can't see up top, says, I was on my way to a women's thing to talk about our ministry, and the Lord prompted me. And I started to pray for you, but she said basically I couldn't pray in English. I began to pray in my spirit language. She said, I believe the Lord wants you to know that He's healed your body. But the enemy does not want you to rise up because you are a threat to His kingdom. I'd like to think I am, but I don't know that I am. She said, He indeed has tried to kill you before. Even when you were younger, she didn't know, about 6 times over my life just after I was born, I went in the hospital. They pumped my stomach out. I drank some stuff I shouldn't have drunk, furniture polish. I was just little, just a toddler. And they called my mama in, and my Melvin's mama, my Aunt Johnny Mae, they called them in, and they said, listen, you sit with him tonight and hold him, because he'll be dead in the morning. Over and over, stuff has happened. In that Westwood Heights I told you about, when I was little, I run through the woods, cut my leg all the way to the bone. You could see the bone. And there wasn't a single solitary hospital or anything up this way. The nearest one was Candler, way down off of past the squares, the old Candler. And when I got there, my leg was in a V, and a puddle of blood was there, and the doctor looked at it and he told my mom, he said, he missed his main artery by a hair. Had he cut that, you'd have never got him in here in time. He'd have bled to death before you got here. The doctor looked in my eyes twice the last 3 or 4 weeks, and he said, at best your leg ought to have been taken off. You probably should have been dead twice. She didn't know any of this. And she said, he has indeed tried to kill you before, even when you were younger, but the Lord has a call on your life. And He's not done with you on this side of eternity. He said that you should not give up the fight. He has so much more for you to do. You'll overcome this because you're an overcomer in the name of Jesus by His grace. The enemy has accused the brethren and has an agenda. And she goes on to say, but God's got a special something for you to do. She doesn't know me. She doesn't know that I've had several brushes with death over the 70-year span. But for some reason, I'm still in this race. I don't know why. I certainly don't think I'm anything special. In fact, I question God oftentimes. Why would you take friends like mine, Tom Green, who is just a few months older than me and doing an incredible job, raising literally millions of dollars for missions? Slim, trim, dies of a heart attack, just like that. I have a friend who pastored a great church in Griffin, Georgia. Run thousands, strong, vibrant, younger than me, died. And I question God sometime when I go down the road. I say, how come you take them? You don't take anything like me. I'm nothing. I don't account for a hill of beans. But somehow you leave me here, and I can't seem to get away from being a pastor. And then she says, God's got something special for you. I don't put a lot of stock in everything that somebody says, but when they tell me stuff that they shouldn't know, I know they've been talking to heaven. So I'm in this race for ever how long that God chooses for me to be here. I want to run it, stripped of anything that would entangle me or weigh me down. I said in the earlier service, I got a couple of young preachers. I got staff members that I want to pour into them. Any speck of knowledge or wisdom that God has given me. I don't know that I have. They're both way smarter than I am. But if I can impart just this much into their lives, it'll be a strong victory for me. But one of these days, when it's over, and it ain't over till it's over, and I get ready to step into that another land, I want to know I've done my best. I told you I love football. And on several occasions over the years, I've watched football players thought they were hot shots. They would run in with the ball running in for a touchdown, and they'd get right at the goal line, and they'd drop that ball. But they hadn't stepped over the goal line. Another team would snatch it up. It's considered a fumble. No touchdown. Some of us are just before stepping in. I don't want to fumble the ball. I don't want to drop it. I don't want anything weighing me down. I don't want anything to keep me from crossing that line, finishing that race. The devil would like to stop a lot of you. He'd like to give you enough weights to beset you. He'd love to give you enough reasons to go, but he's rooting for you. And Hebrews 11 said they all are standing there looking. All of these that have gone on before us. I can't imagine that they're going, that bum won't make it. I got him going. Look at him. He's about to make it. Watch him. He's going to do it. He's just about to the line. When we step over, they're there to cheer us on. They've made it. They've run the race. Paul said, I've finished my course, and I am now ready to be offered up. Paul said, there's nothing else you can do to me. I've made it. I really got concerned this week, and what prompted that sermon is, I don't want to see you fall. I don't want to see you not make it. You're my friends. You're not just church people. You're my friends. You're family to me. We are Maranatha Family Church. I notice since we've changed that, a lot of people's been adopting it, but we really meant it. We're family. And we want to see everybody win this race. Yes. Bow your heads for just a second. Preacher, you sure have gotten tough these last couple Sundays. Well, kind of having a tough experience will do that for you. I just want to see you make this race. You may be up in here today and maybe you're saying, is it worth it? I'm tired, I'm weary, You're about to give up, give in, give over. But God said, don't give up. You've run this race. You are either running or you have run, but you're getting close. Don't quit now. It ain't over till it's over. Make it. You can do it. Maybe you're in this place today and you're contemplating quitting. Maybe you're tired of all the abuse and things that the world are doing to you, and you're just about to give up. Don't give up. Don't quit. Run the race. You used to be in it, but you've let things entangle you. Weights come in on you, and you've gotten slower than you used to be. Not because you give out, but because you're carrying too much weight. Why don't you give that weight up this morning? Why don't you just say right now to the Lord, Lord, help me get rid of all that weight. I laughed and told him this morning, sometimes I wish God had just picked me up by the feet and shake all of that junk out of me, just like I did that frog. How many of you will lift your hand and say, Pastor, I want to finish this race. I want to finish it strong. Yeah. I want to finish it. And I want to finish it strong. I want to be a strong runner, a powerful runner, stripped of every weight that does so easily beset me. I want to run. I want to run till it's over. I don't want to quit. I don't want to give up. I don't want the devil to win. I want to make it. That's what I want today. Make it all the way.